So I'm Bob Tooze. I'm Managing Director of Drochaid Research Services. We're a contract R&D company in catalysis and material science based in St Andrews. So I did my first degree in chemistry at Imperial College, and then I stayed on to do my PhD with Geoff, also at Imperial College, between 82 and 85. I think Geoff really is the reason why I've worked in the chemical industry almost ever since, and I still enjoy chemistry and catalysis, and that's really down to him. So I grew up in a small village in West Wales. So when time came to think about universities, this was before the time of personal statements and university league tables. So I just wanted to go, where's the biggest place I can go to university? And so that was London. And then I asked my chemistry teacher, where's a good place to do chemistry? And he said Imperial College. So I found myself at Imperial College. So I enjoyed Imperial, and but I wasn't kind of born to do chemistry. It wasn't my burning passion. There were many good teachers at Imperial, particularly in the organic side. But then I think in February, probably 1981, I first encountered Geoff when he came into the lecture theatre. And things really just changed then. I mean, it was a strange mixture of anecdote, significance of what he did, underlined by this passion for chemistry, and that changed things for me. And from that day, I really, that was my ambition, was to work for him. Yeah, so in 1982 then I started my PhD for Geoff. I always remember going to see him about doing a PhD. Well, more, I don't remember the actual time asking him about PhD. I remember being an over-keen student. And so just before I left for the summer, when I was due to start with him in September, I went to see him and said, is there anything I could read that would be useful before I came back? So Geoff being Geoff, he took me around his extensive bookcase and started handing me books. So I'd got an armful of books, just about to drop this armful of books, and he said, and if you read all those, you'll know more than I do, and smiled. And then I realised, okay, so he's pricking some of this pomposity or wish to, my desire to just seem keen. So he said, or you could just go away and have a good summer and come back being prepared to work. Geoff to me was the perfect supervisor. He was very keen on what you did, and as long as you worked hard, then he was keen and would support you through that. Had a lot of contact with him. So again, and people are surprised by this, that you did see him a few times a day. Actually, I was in the lab right next to his office, and so I always saw him at lunchtime. So quite often his routine was that he would buy a meat pie on his way up from the tube station, and mine was a glass drying oven that he decided to warm it up in, which was a bit of a surprise to see a Nobel Prize winner warming up his lunch in your glass drying oven. But he was passing through all the time, asking questions about how things were going. I think others have talked about his file card system, so he'd leave you ideas on your desk. But on reflection, what I remember is something changed. So at some point during the PhD, when your work started to gain momentum of its own, he stopped doing that, and it was more asking you, so what's new? What have you done? And so that changed. I was unaware of it at the time, but actually now when I reflect on it, I think that was the mark of a good supervisor. As a person, I mean, clearly he had a passion for chemistry, and his passion for chemistry was really for chemistry. It wasn't for self-advancement. He was past all that. He didn't need to do that. He was desperately keen in understanding the science and doing new things. As I say, as a supervisor, I think he was inspirational, and he instilled a few things in you that I think you carry always with you. Those things for me would be, and others again have spoken about this, he was always keen on new things. So I remember him saying once that you should try and do a new experiment every day, which kind of sounds tough, but it's not, it's something that you could aspire to do. The other thing that he was very keen on, and I've carried on with that ethos, is there's no such thing as pure or applied science or chemistry. There's just good and bad. He was an example of that. So fundamental work that got him a Nobel Prize, but also applied widely in industry. And the final thing was that he said you should aim for things that will end up in textbooks. Probably his textbook, but I took that as meaning do something which is significant and not just something that will be in a paper which nobody ever reads. The other side I would say of him was that he was a very, and this might sound strange, he was a very compassionate man. I think if he thought you cared, then he cared. So I did go back and see him whenever I got a chance after I'd left London. And one of the questions he always asked me is, so how are they treating you? And so that, I think that shows something of him. And as I said before, there was that twinkle in his eye, that certain mischievousness that I think once you got to know him and you talked to him and heard some of his anecdotes, you got a flavour of that as well. Maybe the other thing that I have fond memories of is the group that Geoff had. So Geoff had a small group, certainly by modern standards, maybe 12, 13 people. But it was a very international group. And of course it was made up of very talented characters, so some of which you've seen in other interviews. But I was fortunate to share a lab with Ray Chew. So Ray was a really interesting character, but an incredibly talented chemist, and I learned so much from Ray. And they were the sort of people that were attracted to work in Wilkinson's group. But I think Ray, was again somebody that Wilkinson had lots of time for. I remember Geoff saying that Ray could do an experiment in the time it took other people to think about doing an experiment or getting the equipment together. And that was true. I mean, he was a very talented experimentalist, and I learned so many things from him. I think the other thing that Geoff could recognise the passion other people had for chemistry. So particularly around my time, there were a couple of people who maybe classically wouldn't have qualified for government funding. So Geoff could always find money for these people that he thought, and these people went on to do great things and have stayed in industry since then. So again, that's kind of recognition. He found a means to get these people into chemistry and enthuse them. Another fond memory I have of Geoff was we regularly used to have Wilkinson dinners. So this would involve the group and Geoff, and sometimes his wife Lisa, who was also quite a formidable character, having a meal. That was either in college or out somewhere. There are some anecdotes that I just can't repeat from that. But you saw another side of Geoff. I remember particularly we were at a Russian restaurant that we, the group, had chosen. And halfway through the meal, the police sent to the restaurant went into the kitchen and took out who we assumed to be the chef in handcuffs. So we were all kind of horrified by this, but Geoff thought it was the best thing. So he was just giggling about this for the rest of the meal. Another thing I remember, Geoff had this system of leaving file cards on your desk. So file cards usually were ideas that he wanted you to try or at least think about. As I said before, Geoff, if he thought you were trying hard, then he would help you. And if he thought you were interested, then he was interested in you. But I do remember there was somebody who shall remain nameless who didn't actually see out the course because he was not passionate about it, I think, but he wasn't a regular attender. So Geoff left cards on his desk. So the first one was, where were you on Monday? Where were you on Tuesday? Where were you on Wednesday? Where were you on Thursday? Where were you on Friday? And the final one said, where were you all bloody week? And that was nearly the beginning of the end for this person. So as long as you showed interest, he was interested. So I've still got a few mementos of my time there, one of the more unusual ones. So Geoff had a habit of scribbling all over journals. So of course this was the time when journals were all in paper, and so he took these regularly. So he would annotate these journals, and I actually found these in a skip here at St Andrews University. So a few of us that knew Geoff rescued them. So I have a few different copies of this. So this is actually from the year that he won the Nobel Prize. So there are a couple more that I've kept. One from my time with him, but it was a shame to see these being discarded as we moved to electronic journals. There are various notes. They can be more or less kind. They can say things are interesting or not interesting. He had an encyclopedic mind about things, so he knew the literature. So if you went and asked him a question, he would be able to fish out a journal with his notes on the front to say what that was. So I think the journals probably found their way here to St Andrews, I would guess via David Cole Hamilton, who was a professor of chemistry here. And I think as the library, was looking to liberate space, then people wouldn't have recognised significance. They wouldn't have known whose writing was on the front of this. And things were all going over to electronic copies, so they had to junk things. And it was just lucky that a few of us who recognised the writing saw it in a skip outside, ready to be disposed of. So as I said, the three things I think I still keep from Geoff's time is do new things. There's no such thing as pure and applied, and do stuff in textbooks. And I've been lucky in my career to have the opportunity to work on things which have subsequently been commercialised and people are aware of. So I think that's a legacy of my time. So I still treasure the time I had at Imperial, both with Geoff and the group, and so I'm very happy to be able to contribute to this set of films.